Welcome back, everybody. Let's dive right into this essay. The usual process will apply here. We're going to read out the question, we're going to identify the question type, we're going to find the key words, underline those key words, and then we're going to write a plan together before we begin responding to this task. So let's have a look at the task. Some people think that all university students should study whatever they like. Others believe that they should only be allowed to study subjects that will be useful in the future, such as those related to science and technology. Discuss both these views and give your own opinion. Now, there should be no ambiguity here regarding what type of question this is, as long as you've seen the lecture on the question types. Hopefully you're already saying to me that this is a discussion opinion question, and you would be absolutely right. So let's just write that down first off. We're looking at a discussion opinion essay here. Okay, now let's consider what the key words might be. There's quite a few words in this task, and that usually means there are quite a few different task elements. So it's very important in a task like this to make sure we address them all, and we've got a greater chance of addressing all of those task requirements, task elements, if we highlight or underline the keywords. So what do we think they are? Personally, I would always underline any words like all, because they can, not always, but they often can change the meaning behind a sentence. There's a big difference between all and some. So all, highlight that. Certainly university students, we're not dealing with primary school, secondary school, we're looking at higher education. So university students should study whatever they like. So we can highlight all of that there. Don't worry that it's a lot, these are important parts. Others believe that they should only, again I would put that there, that only be allowed to study subjects that will be useful in the future. I would also highlight the examples that they offer, science and technology, just to give myself an idea of the examples that I could use when responding to this task. We don't really need to highlight anything below. We understand that discuss both these views and give your own opinion. Hopefully you know that this is such a common question that comes up, and hopefully you know the structure for responding to a task like this. If you don't, that's okay. We're going to look at it together in a moment anyway. So there are our keywords. I think that's pretty much all we need to write there. So let's consider how we might plan this essay. As I mentioned, the structure of a discussion opinion task essay, hopefully you already know it, but if you don't, pay attention now, because this is going to be very important. As always, we just want to plan the body paragraphs, body paragraph 1 and body paragraph 2, but before we begin planning the exact content of the paragraphs, we need to come up with a separate theme or central topic for each paragraph. That's an important element of scoring a band 7 or above in coherence and cohesion. So the first body paragraph is going to be composed of the side that you disagree with. Because this is a discussion opinion task, you do need to look at both points of view. You are asked to discuss both points of view. But it makes a little bit more sense, and it's a little bit more common, particularly in academic assignments and essays, to start with the side that you disagree with. Start by discussing the side that you disagree with, because it leads more naturally on to the side that you agree with, because in the second body paragraph, when we look at the side that we agree with, we can sort of address the arguments made previously. It also more naturally leads into the conclusion as well. So that's why it's a better order. Doesn't matter too much if you change the order, but I really do feel that starting with the side you disagree with is better. My view, my opinion, is that it is better for students to be allowed to choose whatever they want to study. So I agree with the first view, the former view. I disagree more with the latter view, the second view. So we're going to look at the latter view first, because it's the side that I disagree with. That is about useful subjects. So I'm just going to title that paragraph plan useful subjects, and the second one we're just going to call whatever. Hopefully you won't just use an expression like that in the paragraph, but of course it's just for our purposes. Remember, when you're writing your plan, definitely don't overthink your plan. Don't overthink the vocabulary. It's meant to be quick, snappy, sharp. You don't want to spend too much time on it, but it is good to have a clear central topic for each paragraph. Now we can get into the business of creating a body paragraph. Now what I'm going to do today is I'm going to already set out the structure that I want to use. I can modify it if I need to, but this is such a dependable structure we can use in so many cases. Topic sentence, support sentence, example sentence, alternative sentence, and result sentence. So let's see if we can create some points here. Topic. So first of all, why do people think that students should only be allowed to study subjects that will offer useful jobs in the future? For me, the argument here is that jobs that are possible after studying these fields usually allow society to progress a little bit more, particularly from a practical point of view. So society, those key words there were just the noun society and the verb progress. I'll think about how I'm going to put it later. It's not going to be a complicated sentence. I usually think it's a bit better if you have a relatively simple first sentence, just so you really clearly communicate your first argument. Why is it so important that universities provide us with these people that allow society to progress? I think a good way of looking at it is to imagine what would happen if they weren't there. And if they weren't there, then we probably wouldn't have the means to enjoy modern life. So let's say no luxuries of modern life. Maybe even luxuries is going too far. Just the basics of modern life, you may argue as well. So we might just put that, I'll decide when I get there. So without these trained professionals, we wouldn't get to enjoy what we take for granted in modern life. That lends itself really nicely to an example, really natural progression, really natural transition into an example here. So we can think about, public transport. We wouldn't be able to have that if we didn't have engineers, which is kind of related to science and technology. So, we've got public transport, we'll call it PT, including things like bridges. Whenever I think of engineers, I always think of bridges for some reason, but they're certainly very important in our modern age. So the alternative and result, then, we need to look at that conditional. What would happen if we didn't train these professionals in this way? Well, let's keep it very, very simple. If we didn't train them, then they wouldn't exist, quite simply. And then the reader can infer that they would actually go back to this idea here. What we're basically doing here is making it much more task specific. So universities don't train. What would happen is that there would be a shortage of these workers, a shortage of these professionals. Yeah. So that's what I'm going to write there. I'm going to focus on my view now. So we're starting with an argument as to why students should be able to study whatever they want. And in my view, the main reason for this is so that we can actually get this. Yes, it's important that we have these workers, but these workers need to be motivated. They need to be passionate. If they're not motivated, if they're not passionate, then they might not do as well of a job, and we actually might end up causing more problems. So if you give students the choice, that creates autonomy, motivation, and passion. So we're just going to write motivation, passion here. That's our main argument. Giving them the choice gives them this. Now why? Why does giving them the choice lead to motivation and passion? It's because free choice gives people a sense of autonomy. Autonomy is one of the main ingredients in creating drive and enthusiasm. Just think about, anything that you personally like, anything you personally enjoy. If you were made to do it, if you were forced to do it on a daily basis, your love for that thing would probably decrease. But if you chose to do it because it was your job that you chose to do, you'd be more likely to maintain those high levels of enthusiasm. Okay, let's keep going. I think let's just go with a result sentence here. This seems to lend itself quite tidily to a result sentence. If we have this drive and enthusiasm, then not only are they going to be more successful, but they're going to take it one step further. They're going to have the impetus to master their subject. There's a difference between success and mastery. They want to reach the top level. So therefore, we're not just going to get good professionals, we're going to get top professionals, really, really good professionals. Again, we can consider what would happen if we didn't do this, if we force students to take subjects like science and technology. What would happen? Well, the drive would disappear. And that may cause problems with our engineering field, with our science field. Maybe the discoveries would dry up, maybe the constructions would fall down because people just wouldn't care enough, they wouldn't pay attention enough, potentially. Anyway, that's the argument that I'm putting forward. So let's leave that there, and we can now consider how we might begin our essay with an introduction. Okay, let's think about that now. Let's move this out the way. Right, an introduction. We're going to make it simple. We're going to go with a there is no doubt today. Do be careful whenever you're using a there is no doubt. You need to be absolutely certain that what you follow it with cannot be doubted. So there is no doubt. What would both sides agree with? That's a good way of thinking about it. You've got this disagreement. What would both sides agree with? I think both sides would agree that university is very important. I don't think anybody's denying that. So let's write that in a slightly nicer way. So there is no doubt that universities play a crucial role. By this point, you might have seen me write this expression a number of times. That's good. I'm only going to write it once in an essay, but you need to hang on to expressions like this because they're very, very versatile. So there's no doubt that universities play a crucial role in, notice the preposition, educating society. And then that's it. Keep it short and sweet for a general statement. It usually helps quite well. However, now the reason I'm using however is because we're contrasting something that's agreed on with something that's disagreed on. So the nice thing here is that we get to say however while. So however contrasts this sentence with the next one, and while contrasts the two views that I'm about to put forward. The first one being, well, some believe that this education, just referring back, this education should be, now here's a nice expression you can use, geared exclusively towards. If something is geared towards something, it has that aim. We often use it with audiences as well. It's geared towards younger people. It's geared towards this purpose as well. So we can use it in both those cases. Here we can say towards subjects that may be of practical use in the future. The key word here is exclusively. So it shouldn't be geared towards anything else. It's like an only towards subjects that may be of practical use in the future. It's a little bit similar to what we've got up here, but I've said of practical use rather than useful. Now we've got to the end of that idea, that view. We're going to use a comma to create that complex sentence, and now we're going to put forward my point of view. Now notice that I'm also, by putting forward my point of view, I'm also including other people's views as well, like up here. I would agree with those who argue. I would agree with those who argue that, how can I put this forward, potentially one's choice of, I've used subject, so I'm going to use the term for the subject at university that you take for your qualification, which will be a degree. One's choice of degree should lie with the student. And there we are. I think that's good enough. If I just read that again, there is no doubt universities play a crucial role in educating society. However, while some believe that this education should be geared exclusively towards subjects that may be of practical use in the future, I would agree with those who argue that one's choice of degree should lie with the student. Potentially a little bit wordy, 51 words, maybe a word more than I would have liked, but you can see there's quite a lot of language in this task, so sometimes it's difficult to keep that introduction a bit shorter. You probably could if you were willing to be a bit more concise, but if you've got the speed, then there's no problem with having a bit slightly longer introduction. Let's move into the first body paragraph, and we're focusing initially on the useful subjects. Because this is a discussion opinion task, you can use that on the one hand and on the other hand, but I'm going to use a firstly. And the reason that I'm using firstly is because this is actually my point of view as well. Notice what I said earlier. I was talking about all of this, and I said if you don't have this, then you can't have this. So I actually agree that society has to be able to progress, and we need to have the ingredients of progress, which is not just qualified professionals but motivated professionals. So I'm actually going to put this forward as my own point of view, but it will actually kind of overlap with other people's point of views. So I don't need to say those who believe argue that. In a different essay, if you were completely against what you were writing, then you would say those who believe the viewpoint argue that the argument, or people who believe the viewpoint may argue that the argument. Okay, so do be careful with this. This is kind of my own view, so we can put this forward as a firstly. So firstly, it is vital that universities equip our workforce. Quite a nice expression. Whenever you're dealing with university and society and jobs, workforce is a very good word to have in your arsenal, with scientists, engineers, really focusing on that science and technology aspect, and other professionals that, or which, up to you, because this is a defining relative clause, you can use that or which, enable our society to progress. Okay, so there is no language here saying some people believe, those who believe. You could actually add it, it would be okay, but because this is also my own view, I think it's pretty hard to deny this anyway. Then in fact, if you added it in, it might actually sound a bit strange. So some people believe that universities should equip our workforce with scientists. No, I think everybody kind of agrees that. So do be careful not to just include that without thinking. So this is my own view as well. We don't need to include those who believe, or many people believe, etc. Okay, now why is it important to equip our workforce with such professionals? Well, this is because we've got that support sentence. Now when you look at the S, I just want you immediately to think this is because, this happens because, the reason for this is, without thinking too much about how you're going to transition. You want that speed, but you also want accuracy. This is because a country without such experts, another way of saying professionals would be experts, without such experts is a country, and yes, there's repetition here, but it's on purpose. It has this nice symmetry. A country without this is a country without this. You know, it has that nice sound to it. Is a country without, see that repetition again, but on purpose, without the means, so the possibility of, or the ability to, the means to plan, maybe a nice three-part list here, create or maintain essential features. So this is another way of saying basics, but I like the expression essential features of modern life, because that's what engineers, scientists and that lot do. They plan first, they create second, they maintain third. We need to have all of those things. And it's nice to just chuck in a three-part list every now and again, this time with verbs. Okay, we have an example. I'm not going to overthink it, just going to jump straight into a for instance. For instance, now what I have here is the possibility to use a conditional. I'm probably going to end up using a few conditionals in this essay, but that's not a problem at all, because conditionals are a good way of showing your grammatical range. They're not easy sentences to get right, so I'm going to take advantage of the fact that I can do them, so I'll bring them in. So if we did not have university educated engineers. We're just going to focus on one field of work now. I think I've mentioned it before, but when you give examples, if you can be very singular in your focus, if you can just pick out one particular example, it really strengthens the example because the reader is able to imagine it much more easily in his or her head. So it has that strength, that visual clarity. So if we did not have university educated engineers, I'm going to stop here. I'm just going to give you a gap fill. Something not enjoy such public transport facilities as, I've got bridges here, but I'm actually going to do this kind of separate. Such transport facilities, in fact, and infrastructure. Of course, whenever we think of engineers, we're thinking infrastructure too. And infrastructure as subways. And that's quite an American term, but it's okay to bring this in. As subways, trams, we could say, and of course, my favorite, when I think of engineers, bridges. Okay, now if we look back in this sentence, I've left a little gap here because I want to just test for a moment your conditional grammar. If we have this gap here, what word do you think goes in that gap? Hopefully you're already screaming it at the screen, which would be great, and hopefully you're saying would, because we have a past tense in the cause clause. So you've got the cause and effect. Here's the cause. If it's past tense here, then we use would on the other side to create a second conditional. And we use the second conditional to suggest something that is unlikely or hypothetical. Now, this is definitely hypothetical because we do have university educated engineers. So second conditional. If we were to use the first conditional here, it would be wrong. Notice my use of the second conditional as I said that. Really, really important to practice your conditionals because they're so useful within essays, both to illustrate and strengthen your points and to demonstrate your grammatical range. So they're like a superpower for your essay. Really important. Okay, one more sentence here, because usually when we've got the A and the R, they can combine together, kind of like I was going to do down here. So we just want to write one more. So we're going to write, here's an expression that's quite nice. The argument goes. Now, because I've written this in, I am now separating myself from the viewpoint, from what follows in this sentence. Here we can see this is all my own view because I didn't write any language that separated myself from the content. This time I'm going to write that because I do not believe that we would have a shortage of workers if we didn't force universities to train their students in this way. So I'm going to write the argument goes. This is what the argument is of people who believe this. So the argument goes that if students are allowed to choose what they want to study, then we're going to have a negative consequence of that. So people who do not agree with this is what they think. The argument goes that if students are allowed to choose what they want to study, then there will be, notice that, are allowed, present, and then over here will be, so we've got that first conditional, will be a shortage of these important workers. So this is a vital piece of the language in this paragraph. Do not look over it. Really take it in. Try to absorb that. It's very important. If you've been writing a paragraph and you agree with everything it said, but then you want to change direction to the argument that you might not agree with, then you can use the argument goes. It helps to separate yourself from that viewpoint, from that argument at least.